Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. So here's the thing about Galactic Coalition Station Pinnacle. It was supposed to be a shining example of interspecies cooperation, a beacon of unity in the cold vastness of space, a testament to what different civilizations could achieve when they worked together. And mostly, it was just a really expensive metal donut where everyone argued about temperature settings and who left their weird alien lunch rotting in the communal cooling unit. The station orbited a neutral trade world called Aquara, because, apparently, when you translate boring but diplomatically convenient into the old Coalition standard tongue, you get Aquara. It housed approximately 3,000 personnel from 46 different species, all of whom had very strong opinions about everything, especially the humans who'd only joined the Coalition 6 months ago and were still trying to figure out which bathroom configurations wouldn't cause an interstellar incident. Grant was one of those humans. Maintenance technician, third class, which meant he fixed things that broke, and on a station full of beings who evolved in wildly different environments with wildly different ideas about what proper maintenance meant. Things broke constantly. He'd been on Pinnacle for exactly 183 days, not that he was counting or anything, and he'd already repaired 17 different atmospheric processors, 42 door mechanisms, and one very unfortunate plumbing situation that he'd sworn a blood oath never to speak of again. Today's assignment: Xenobiology Wing, Juvenile Habitat Section, Ventilation System acting up again. The Xenobiology Wing was exactly what it sounded like, a section of the station dedicated to the study, care, and occasional emergency housing of various alien species. The Juvenile Habitat Section was where they kept the kids. Well, kids in the loosest possible sense. Some of them were barely mobile, some of them could already calculate quantum trajectories, and some of them, like the current residents, could probably chew through a blast door if they got bored enough. Grant hauled his toolkit through the habitat entrance, nodding at the security scanner that beeped its approval. The wing was quieter than usual, which was either a good sign or a very, very bad one. In his experience, silence in areas containing juvenile life forms was nature's way of saying someone is doing something they shouldn't be doing. The habitat area was designed with modular environments, different temperature zones, gravity wells, atmospheric compositions, the works. It looked like someone had taken a zoo, a science lab, and a very expensive hotel and thrown them in a blender. Right now, most of the habitats were empty, except for one. The high-security enclosure at the far end, which currently housed 4 Dralfax cubs. Grant had heard about the Dralfax. Everyone had. They were apex predators from a planet called Dralmar, which had 3 times standard gravity and wildlife that made prehistoric Earth look like a petting zoo. The Dralfax themselves looked like someone had crossed a dire wolf with a grizzly bear, then covered the whole thing in overlapping obsidian scales and added 6 eyes just to make sure they could track prey from literally every angle. They stood 9 feet tall when fully grown, could run at speeds that broke most measuring equipment, and had jaw strength capable of crushing titanium alloy. Their cubs, currently aged at the equivalent of 5 or 6 human years, were already the size of adult humans and possessed all the natural weaponry of their species. Just, in a smaller, cuter package that could still absolutely disembowel you if they felt like it. They were on the station because their parents, War Master Groth and Hunt Leader Nahlis, both very important military figures in the Dralfax Dominion, were attending some kind of diplomatic summit. Apparently, even apex predators needed someone to watch the kids during parent-teacher conferences, or whatever the Galactic Coalition equivalent was. Grant climbed the access ladder to the ventilation shaft above the habitat section, popped open the panel, and immediately understood the problem. Someone, probably one of the Prin maintenance crew who didn't understand mammalian biology, had installed a filter designed for methane breathers. The whole system was trying to compensate and failing miserably. "Idiots," Grant muttered, pulling out the wrong filter and fishing in his toolkit for the right one. This was going to take maybe 20 minutes. Tops. Easy fix. He'd be back to his quarters in time for the human movie night that Thorne was organizing. Something called The Great Escape, which felt a little on the nose given that they were all living in a giant sealed environment in space, but whatever. Below him, he could hear movement in the habitat. Scratching sounds, low, rumbling vocalizations that probably meant the cubs were playing. Their caretaker, a flitwing named Mallow, was supposed to be watching them, but Grant hadn't seen anyone when he came in, probably on a break. The poor thing had looked absolutely exhausted the last time Grant had seen them, all ruffled feathers and twitchy movements that suggested too much stress and not enough sleep. Grant had seen that look before. That was the look of someone dealing with 4 high-energy kids who didn't understand the concept of inside voices, or personal space, or please stop trying to eat the furniture. He finished installing the new filter, ran a quick diagnostic to make sure the system was cycling properly, then climbed back down. His stomach rumbled, reminding him that he'd skipped lunch because the human cafeteria had been serving something that was allegedly a hamburger, but looked like it had already been digested once. He pulled out the sandwich he'd packed that morning. Actual bread he'd managed to barter from the Ulthani baker. Real, synthesized turkey protein and some kind of lettuce equivalent that tasted almost right if you didn't think about it too hard. He sat down on one of the benches near the observation window of the Dralfax habitat, unwrapped his sandwich, and took a bite. Through the reinforced glass, he could see the cubs tumbling over each other in a corner, their obsidian scales gleaming under the habitat's artificial sunlight. They were actually kind of beautiful in a terrifying sort of way. All liquid grace and barely contained power. That's when he heard it. A very distinct clicking sound that meant something had just unlocked. Grant looked up. The habitat door, the reinforced, triple-locked, definitely should not be opening habitat door, was sliding open. "Oh, that's not good," Grant said to his sandwich. 4 Dralfax cubs tumbled out into the observation area, their 6 eyes blinking as they adjusted to the different lighting. They were chattering to each other in their own language, which sounded like rocks grinding together mixed with a tiger's purr. One of them, the largest, with a distinctive white patch on its snout, spotted Grant immediately. All 4 cubs froze. Grant froze. His sandwich was halfway to his mouth. For a long moment, nobody moved. Grant's brain was helpfully supplying him with statistics he'd read in the station briefing. Dralfax cubs, while not fully grown, possess hunting instincts from birth. Bites can sever limbs. Claws can pierce standard body armor. Do not approach. Do not make sudden movements. Alert security immediately. The cubs were staring at him with all 24 of their collective eyes. Grant took another bite of his sandwich. The cubs tilted their heads in unison, which would have been adorable if they weren't predators that could probably kill him in about 6 different ways. The one with the white patch took a cautious step forward, nostrils flaring. "Hey there," Grant said, because apparently his survival instincts had taken a vacation. "You guys escape again?" "Yeah, I bet you did. Mallow's probably having a breakdown somewhere." The cubs chittered at each other. Another one, this one smaller with darker scales, crept forward. Then another. They were surrounding him, which was definitely a hunting behavior. And Grant should probably be panicking right about now. But honestly? After 6 months of dealing with diplomatic crises, homesick humans, and that thing in the plumbing, His panic threshold had gotten pretty high. Also, they kind of moved like puppies. Really big, scaly, potentially lethal puppies. The white-patched cub reached him first, sniffing at his boots. Grant held very still, sandwich still in hand. The cub's nose, wet and about the size of Grant's fist, traveled up his leg, across his torso, and finally stopped at the sandwich. "Oh, you want this?" Grant asked. "Nah, pretty sure turkey protein isn't on your diet plan, buddy. Your parents would probably eat me if I gave you processed meat." The cub made a sound that was almost like a whine. The other three had completed their encirclement and were now also sniffing various parts of Grant's body with intense concentration. One of them was nosing at his toolkit. Another was examining his boots like they were the most fascinating things in the universe. "You guys are just bored, aren't you?" Grant said, taking another bite of his sandwich. "Yeah, I get it. Stuck in a box all day while your folks do important grown-up stuff? That's rough." The smallest cub, barely the size of a large dog, which was apparently tiny for a Dralfax, made a decision. It climbed directly into Grant's lap, circled exactly 3 times like every dog Grant had ever known, and flopped down with a contented rumble that vibrated through Grant's entire skeleton. "Okay then," Grant said, sandwich now definitely forgotten. "I guess we're doing this." The white-patched cub immediately decided that if the smallest one got lap privileges, it wanted in too. It draped itself across Grant's legs, its weight pinning him to the bench. The other 2 cubs flanked him on either side, pressing against him like enormous scaly bookends. And then they started purring. Dralfax purring, Grant discovered, was not like cat purring. It was deeper, more resonant, the kind of sound you felt in your bones and probably in your dental fillings. It was also, weirdly, kind of soothing. The cubs were warm, really warm, because high-metabolism predators run hot, and surprisingly soft in the spaces between their scales. Grant finished his sandwich one-handed, the other hand having been appropriated by the smallest cub, who had decided his palm made an excellent pillow. The cub's purring had synchronized into a rhythm that was honestly making Grant a little drowsy himself. "This is fine," he told himself. "This is a completely normal situation. Just a regular maintenance call that turned into nap time with apex predator children. Nothing to worry about. Absolutely nothing could go wrong here." That's when Mallow flew into the observation area, saw the scene, and made a sound like a tea kettle achieving consciousness, and immediately regretting it. "What? How? The cubs! They're your—" Mallow's feathers were standing completely on end, making them look like an explosion in a pillow factory. "Hey, Mallow," Grant said calmly, because the cubs had shifted at the sudden noise, and he really didn't want them startled. "So, your lock's broken. I can fix that after this, if you want." "After this?" Mallow's voice had gone up about 3 octaves. "Those are Dralfax cubs! They could kill you!" "I mean, probably," Grant agreed, "but they seem pretty chill right now. So maybe let's not rock the boat?" The smallest cub yawned, displaying rows of teeth that could shred a bulkhead, and nuzzled deeper into Grant's side. Its purring intensified. Mallow's eyes, all 3 of them, were the size of dinner plates. "I need to call security. I need to call medical. I need to call, ancestors. I need to call their parents." "Maybe start with security," Grant suggested. "And hey, could you not make any loud noises? I think they just fell asleep." Indeed, the cubs' purring had taken on a slower, deeper quality. Their 6 eyes, each, had closed. The white-patched cub was drooling slightly on Grant's leg, which was gross but also kind of endearing. Mallow made several more incoherent sounds, then practically flew out of the observation area, presumably to trigger every alarm on the station. Grant looked down at the 4 predator cubs currently using him as a communal bed. "Well," he said to them quietly, "this is either going to be a really funny story later or the last thing I ever do. 50-50 odds, really." The smallest cub snored, an adorable sound that also somehow shook the bench. "Yeah," Grant said, carefully adjusting his position to get slightly more comfortable under about 800 pounds of sleeping apex predator. "This is fine, totally fine." Somewhere in the distance, alarms started blaring. Commander Thorne had seen a lot of weird things in her 15 years of military service. She'd seen a diplomatic incident start because 2 species had radically different ideas about what constituted a polite greeting. She'd seen a bar fight that involved 0 gravity and 6 different types of biological weaponry that were technically just body parts. She'd once watched a Prin delegate try to explain the concept of individual identity to a hive mind that genuinely could not understand why that would be desirable. But this was new. She'd been in the middle of a tactical briefing about updated security protocols when Mallow had burst into her office, feathers everywhere, making sounds that Thorne's translator implant was rendering as catastrophe, death, doom, murder, cubs, human catastrophe. Thorne had grabbed her sidearm, assembled a rapid response team, and sprinted to the xenobiology wing, expecting to find, at minimum, a bloodbath. At maximum, she was expecting to have to write one of those reports that started with, "Regrettably, despite our best efforts," and ended with someone's next of kin getting a folded flag, or whatever the human equivalent of that was these days. What she found instead was Grant, the quiet maintenance tech who mostly kept to himself and had once fixed her coffee maker at 2 in the morning without asking for anything in return. Sitting on a bench with 4 Dralfax cubs, sleeping on and around him, like he was a particularly comfortable piece of furniture. Grant looked up as Thorne and her team entered, weapons drawn. He held up one finger to his lips in the universal gesture for "shut up," which was absolutely not the appropriate response when your commanding officer had just arrived at what was supposed to be a crisis situation. "Thorne," he said quietly, "hey, so, funny story." "Grant," Thorne said, her voice very carefully controlled, "what the actual hell am I looking at right now?" "Nap time," Grant replied, as if that explained anything. "The cubs got out. They were curious. We bonded. Now they're sleeping. It's been maybe 30 minutes?" One of the cubs, the largest one, shifted slightly, draping one massive paw across Grant's chest. Its claws, each the length of Thorne's fingers, flexed slightly in sleep. "Permission to extract you from the situation," Thorne said, already calculating the best approach angles. "Yeah, see, here's the thing," Grant said. "I tried to get up about 15 minutes ago, just to test the waters. The little one woke up and made this sound. I don't have the vocabulary to describe it, but my hindbrain immediately said, 'That is the sound a predator makes before it removes your face.' So I stopped moving, and it went back to sleep." "So you're being held hostage by sleeping children," Thorne said flatly. "I mean, I wouldn't phrase it like that, but functionally, yes." Thorne's second-in-command, a human named Paulson, leaned over and whispered, "Ma'am, should we attempt a rescue operation?" "With what?" Thorne hissed back. "Those cubs could tear through our armor like tissue paper. We start shooting tranquilizers. They wake up angry. And then we've got 4 pissed-off apex predators and a very squishy civilian in the middle." "So what's the play?" Thorne looked at Grant, who had somehow managed to shift his position slightly and was now scratching the smallest cub behind what passed for its ears. The cub's purring intensified, a sound that Thorne could feel vibrating through the floor panels. "Grant," she said carefully, "what are you doing?" "It had an itch," Grant explained. "Right there, see? Same spot my old dog used to get. You can tell because they start doing that thing with their back leg." Sure enough, the cub's rear leg was twitching rhythmically. "Your old dog," Thorne repeated, "was not a Dralfax combat breed apex predator." "No, but he was a Rottweiler mix who once ate through my neighbor's fence, so, you know, similar energy." Thorne pinched the bridge of her nose. "I'm going to ask you a very serious question, and I need you to answer honestly. Are you concussed? Did you hit your head on something? Is there any chance you're having a psychotic break right now?" "Nope, nope, and probably not," Grant said cheerfully. "Look, I know this looks bad. It looks insane. But they're just kids, Thorne. Yeah, they're scary kids with murder claws and way too many eyes, but they're still kids. They got bored. They got out. They found something interesting. That'd be me. And now they're tired. It's not complicated." "Not complicated," Thorne muttered. "Right. Okay. New plan. Nobody moves, nobody makes sudden noises, and we wait for the cub's parents to arrive." "Their parents?" Grant's expression changed slightly. "Oh, when you say parents, you mean War Master Groth and Hunt Leader Naylus. Yes, they're being extracted from the diplomatic summit as we speak. ETA is approximately 20 minutes. And they're going to find their children sleeping on a random human they've never met." "Yes. And these are, what, military leaders? Important people? Two of the most decorated warriors in the Dralfax Dominion. Yes." Grant processed this for a moment. "Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how dead am I?" "That's actually a really good question," Thorne admitted. "Mallow, get me everything we have on Dralfax parenting instincts and territorial behavior. Now!" Mallow, who had been hovering near the doorway, having what looked like a sustained anxiety attack, jumped and started frantically pulling up data on a portable tablet. Okay. Dralfax are pack-oriented, highly protective of their young. They operate on a dominance hierarchy, but it's not aggressive. It's more about, ancestors." "Oh, ancestors? What?" Thorne demanded. "According to this, Dralfax cubs only sleep in the presence of the pack's most dominant, most trusted member. Usually the alpha pair, the parents, sometimes an auntie or uncle if they're established family, but never, ever with strangers." Everyone looked at Grant. "I'm not dominant," Grant protested. "I'm a maintenance tech. My job is literally fixing things that break. I'm the opposite of dominant." "Tell that to them," Thorne said, gesturing at the cubs who had somehow managed to pile even more thoroughly onto Grant. The white-patched one was now using his thigh as a pillow, snoring in a way that sounded like distant thunder. "This is ridiculous," Grant said. I'm just sitting here." "That might be the point," Mallow said slowly, reading more from the tablet. "Dralfax dominance isn't about aggression or displays of strength. It's about, this is fascinating. It's about calm certainty, the ability to remain composed in the presence of danger. The cubs instinctively trust whoever shows no fear and no hostile intent." "I wasn't showing anything," Grant said. "I was eating a sandwich." "Exactly." Mallow's feathers were starting to settle slightly as academic interest overtook panic. "You didn't treat them as threats. You didn't try to dominate them or submit to them. You just existed, calmly, while eating a sandwich, in the presence of 4 predators who could have killed you." "I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds impressive. But really, I was just hungry and tired." Thorne was about to respond when her comm unit chirped. She listened for a moment, her expression going very carefully neutral. Copy that, directing them to your location now. She looked at Grant. The parents are here. They're coming down the corridor right now. Grant, listen to me very carefully. Do not move. Do not speak unless spoken to. And for the love of everything, do not do anything that could be interpreted as a threat. Wasn't planning on it, Grant said. Kind of stuck here anyway. The sound of approaching footsteps was like thunder. Heavy, deliberate. The kind of footfalls that suggested whatever was making them weighed about as much as a small vehicle. Thorne's security team instinctively raised their weapons, then lowered them again when Thorne made a sharp gesture. War Master Groth entered first. He was massive. 9 feet of scaled muscle and predatory grace, moving with the kind of fluid certainty that suggested he'd never encountered anything he couldn't kill if he decided to. His scales were a deep, dark gray, almost black, with patterns of lighter gray that might have been scars or might have been natural markings. All 6 of his eyes locked onto Grant immediately, and Thorne watched the War Master's pupils dilate in what her limited knowledge of Dralfak's body language suggested was surprise. Hunt leader Nallis was right behind him, slightly smaller but somehow more intimidating, her scales a reddish-brown that caught the light like polished copper. She moved like liquid death, and when she saw her cubs sleeping on Grant, she made a sound low in her throat that Thorne's translator couldn't process. For a very long moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Grant, to his credit, just sat there looking politely uncomfortable, like he'd been caught in someone else's seat at a movie theater rather than being used as bedding by 4 alien predator children. Groth spoke first, his voice a deep rumble that Thorne's translator rendered as, "Human, you are holding our offspring." "Not really by choice, sir," Grant replied. "They kind of just happened. The lock was broken, they got out, and apparently I looked comfortable." "You did not call for help. Didn't want to startle them. Seemed like that would end badly for everyone, mostly me." Nallis moved closer, circling the bench. Her 6 eyes examined every angle of the situation. "They sleep," she said. "Our cubs sleep on you." "Yes, ma'am. Been about 45 minutes now." "This is not normal behavior for our young," Groth said. He looked at Thorne. "Commander, explain how this human came to be in contact with our children." Thorne launched into a crisp professional summary of events. The broken lock, Grant's maintenance call, the cub's escape, the current situation. As she spoke, she watched the 2 Dralfak's parents exchange a series of looks that she couldn't quite interpret. When she finished, Nallis spoke again. "Your human made no attempt to harm them." "No, ma'am. Grant's not exactly the threatening type. He did not flee. He was sort of trapped pretty quickly. He did not panic." This wasn't a question. "I was a little panicked internally," Grant offered, "but I didn't see much point in showing it." Groth moved closer, leaning down until his massive head was level with Grant's. All 6 eyes fixed on the human with an intensity that made Thorne's hand drift toward her sidearm out of pure instinct. "Human," Groth said slowly, "do you understand what you have done? Made some questionable life. Choices, Grant suggested. Failed to follow proper safety protocols? Accidentally become a cub bed? You have been accepted," Nallis said, "by our children, as pack." The silence that followed was profound. "I'm sorry," Grant said finally. "I'm what now?" "Dralfak's cubs," Groth explained, his tone taking on what might have been patience, "are born with instincts that determine pack hierarchy. They can sense threat. They can sense weakness. They can sense predatory intent or lack thereof. If they judge an individual as safe, as trustworthy, they will accept that individual into their pack structure. By sleeping on them, Grant said. Yes. So, when you found me here, we found our cubs in the presence of an unknown individual of an unknown species, completely vulnerable, in deep sleep. This should be impossible. This suggests that you, human Grant, have been deemed by our offspring to be apex, to be protector, to be pack. Grant looked down at the sleeping cubs, then back up at the two enormous warriors who were still staring at him with unreadable expressions. I'm really not, though, he said. I'm extremely not apex anything. I fix air filters and occasionally unclog drains. There's been a mistake. Cubs do not make mistakes, Nahlis said firmly. Okay, but consider, they're children. Children make mistakes constantly. Human kids once convinced themselves that eating laundry detergent was a good idea. Kids are not reliable judges of anything. Groth made a sound that might have been a laugh. You understand our young are predators, yes, born hunters. Their instincts have been honed by millions of years of evolution on a planet that actively tries to kill everything on it. Right, but... And yet you sat calmly in their presence. You showed no fear. I was definitely afraid. But you did not act on that fear. You remained calm, certain. This is what marks an apex predator among our kind, human Grant. Not size, not strength, not weaponry, but the ability to face danger with calm certainty. I was just eating a sandwich, Grant said weakly. Thorn watched as Groth and Nahlis exchanged another look, this one accompanied by that same untranslatable sound from earlier. Then, to her absolute shock, both of them lowered themselves into what she recognized from the briefing materials as a gesture of respect. On behalf of our house and our pack, Groth said formally, we thank you for protecting our young. I didn't really protect them, Grant protested. I just sat here. You did not harm them when they were vulnerable, Nahlis said. You did not call hunters to cage them. You did not respond with violence. You showed our children kindness. This is protection of the highest order. Grant opened his mouth, closed it, then said, You guys know I'm going to have to get up eventually, right? I have to use the bathroom, like, urgently. The smallest cub chose that moment to wake up, yawning wide enough to show every one of its terrifying teeth. It looked up at Grant, then noticed its parents, and made a happy chirping sound before burrowing back into Grant's side and falling asleep again. We will stand watch, Groth announced. Until our cubs wake naturally, we will ensure no harm comes to this place. I'm sorry, what? Thorn said. Our cubs have chosen, Nahlis said simply. We honor that choice. This human has proven himself worthy of our trust, whether he believes it or not. We will protect what our cubs protect. She moved to the entrance of the observation area, settling into a position that blocked the doorway entirely. Groth took up position on the other side. Thorn's comm unit exploded with chatter. Within minutes, she was getting reports of Dralfak's warriors, apparently friends or family of Groth and Nahlis, arriving at the xenobiology wing and taking up defensive positions throughout the section. Oh no, Thorn said. Oh no, no, no. This is a diplomatic incident. This is several diplomatic incidents. You can't just... This is a coalition station. You can't just occupy it. We occupy nothing, Groth said calmly. We simply watch over our pack. Is this not acceptable? Before Thorn could answer, her comm chirped again. Administrator Lowell's voice came through, sounding like a man who'd just watched his entire career catch fire. Thorn, what the hell is happening down there? I have 8 Dralfak's warriors setting up sniper positions on the roof of the xenobiology wing. Thorne looked at Grant, who was still trapped under a pile of sleeping cubs, now also somehow being guarded by an elite alien warrior force. Grant shrugged as best he could. "I really need to use the bathroom," he said. And the cubs just kept on sleeping. Administrator Lowell had worked in diplomatic circles for 23 years. He'd negotiated trade agreements, resolved border disputes, and once talked down a Prin war fleet that had gotten lost and accidentally ended up in protected space. He considered himself unflappable, professional, and capable of handling any crisis with grace and dignity. He was currently having what medical professionals would probably classify as a moment. The Situation Room was packed with representatives from a dozen different species, all of whom had opinions, very loud opinions, about the fact that a significant portion of the station was now effectively under Dralfac's military occupation. "This is unacceptable." The Ulthani representative, a floating jellyfish-like being named Drifting Thought of Morning, which everyone just called Drift, pulsed an angry shade of purple. "This station is neutral territory. You cannot simply allow an armed force to take defensive positions without authorization." "They're not taking positions," Lowell said, his voice strained. "They're watching over the human and the cubs, who are asleep on the human. The human who is effectively being held hostage," added the Prin delegate, their mandibles clicking in agitation. The Prin didn't have individual names in a way that translated well, so everyone just called this one the Prin delegate and hoped context would handle the rest. "He's not being held hostage," Thorne interjected from her position near the door. "He's just stuck. Because if he moves, the cubs might wake up angry, and then we'd have a real situation. As opposed to the fake situation we currently have." Lowell rubbed his temples. "Where we have Dralfac's snipers on the roof." "They're not snipers," Groth's voice rumbled from the corner, where he'd been standing silently for the past 20 minutes. "They are watchers, protectors. There is a difference." "The difference being what, exactly?" Drift pulsed. "Snipers shoot," Groth said calmly. "Watchers observe. They will not fire unless someone attempts to harm our cubs or the human who protects them." "The human who didn't ask for this protection," Lowell pointed out. "The human who, last I checked, just wanted to fix a ventilation system and maybe eat his lunch in peace. And yet, he chose to remain when he could have fled," Nahlis added. She'd accompanied Groth to the emergency session, leaving their cubs still sleeping on Grant, under the watchful eye of 3 other Dralfax adults. He chose calm over panic, protection over self-preservation. These choices have meaning. "To you," the Prin delegate said. "But what about his choices? His agency? You've turned him into some kind of involuntary pack member?" "We have honored him," Groth corrected. "There is no higher honor among our people than to be trusted by cubs." Lowell was about to respond when the door slid open and Grant himself shuffled in, looking exhausted and slightly traumatized. He'd finally been freed when the smallest cub had woken up hungry and wandered off in search of food, triggering a chain reaction of wakefulness among its siblings. "Grant," Lowell said with relief. "Thank God. Are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" "I need a bathroom, a shower, and possibly therapy," Grant said. "Also, my left leg is completely asleep and might never recover. But otherwise, I'm fine." "Can you please," Lowell said desperately, "explain to these Dralfax warriors that you don't need an armed guard?" Grant looked at Groth and Nahlis, who were watching him with expressions that Grant was learning to read as respectful but immovable. "Look," Grant said carefully, "I appreciate the gesture, I really do. But this is kind of a lot. I'm nobody special. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Or maybe the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on how you look at it. You sell yourself short, human Grant, Nahlis said. Our cubs do not extend trust lightly. They're kids, Grant said. Kids trust the weirdest things. Human children once started a panic because they thought a purple dinosaur was real and living in their television sets. Kids are not paragons of good, judgment. The Prin delegate made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. Finally, someone speaking sense. However, Grant continued, and Lowell's heart sank. I get what you're saying about pack dynamics and instinct and all that. And honestly, your cubs are sweet. Terrifying, but sweet. That little one, the smallest one, it's got this thing where it squeaks when it yawns, and it's adorable. You're not helping, Lowell muttered. What I'm saying is, Grant pressed on, maybe we can find a middle ground here. I'm happy to visit the cubs, hang out, tell them stories, whatever. But the armed guard thing is making everyone nervous, and I really just want to go back to fixing air filters without causing interstellar incidents. Groth and Nahlis conferred quietly in their own language, a series of rumbles and clicks that the translator didn't even attempt to process. Finally, Groth turned back to the assembled group. We propose a compromise, he said. We will reduce our visible presence. No watchers on roofs. But human Grant will visit our cubs daily until we depart the station. He will be under our protection during these visits, but we will not extend that protection in a manner that disrupts station operations. And if I say no? Grant asked. Then our cubs will be disappointed, Nahlis said simply. And a disappointed Dralfax cub is a destructive Dralfax cub. The last time our smallest was upset, it chewed through a bulkhead. The one before that, it somehow learned to disable door locks. That was your kid? Grant said. That's how they escaped? Our children are clever, Groth said, with what might have been parental pride. Lowell looked at Grant. Grant looked at the ceiling. Everyone else looked at each other. Fine, Grant said finally. I'll visit the murder puppies, but I'm logging this as hazard pay. Agreed, Lowell said quickly, before anyone could change their minds. Thorne, make it happen. Groth, Nahlis, please inform your people that they can stand down from their positions. It will be done, Groth said. As the meeting broke up and various delegates filed out, still muttering about proper protocol and unprecedented situations, Drift floated over to Grant. You are either very brave or very foolish, the Ulthani said. Little bit of both, Grant admitted. Mostly I'm just tired and confused. You've made quite an impression on a very powerful species, Drift observed. That could be useful. Or dangerous. Yeah, well, Grant said, finally heading toward the door and the bathroom that awaited beyond. Story of my life, really. Behind him, he could hear Nahlis saying something to Groth in their own language. Whatever it was, it sounded approving. Grant decided not to think about what he'd just agreed to. One day at a time. That's how you survived in space. One weird, terrifying, occasionally adorable day at a time. 3 weeks later, Grant had settled into what he could only describe as the galaxy's weirdest routine. Morning shift. Fix whatever broke overnight, which on a station full of incompatible species was always something. Lunch. Visit 4 increasingly affectionate apex predator cubs who now recognized his footsteps and would start chittering excitedly before he even entered the habitat. Afternoon. More repairs, more maintenance, more wondering how his life had gotten so strange. The cubs had learned to play fetch. This was equally adorable and terrifying because what they fetched were pieces of reinforced metal plating that weighed more than Grant did. The smallest one, Grant had started privately calling it Squeaker because of the yawn thing, had developed a habit of grooming his hair with its tongue, which felt like being licked by heated sandpaper and probably counted as a workplace hazard. Other humans had started joining him. Ripley from engineering came by and taught the cubs a clapping game that ended with enthusiastic tail wagging and a cracked floor panel. Tommy from the reactor maintenance team discovered that the white-patched cub loved having its belly rubbed, though you had to dodge the reflexive kick that could probably dent a bulkhead. The pattern was becoming clear. Humans who approached the cubs without trying to dominate or show fear, who just treated them like the kids they were, got accepted. Humans who swaggered in trying to prove something got growled at until they left. It was on a quiet afternoon, while Grant was watching Ripley attempt to explain the concept of peekaboo to an intensely confused cub, that Groth approached him. "Human Grant," the War Master said. "Walk with me." They left the habitat area, moving through the station's corridors. Other species moved aside quickly when they saw Groth, which was probably smart. The Dralfax leader led Grant to an observation deck that looked out over Aquara's pale blue surface. "I have a confession," Groth said after a moment. Grant's stomach dropped. "Oh no. What kind of confession? The 'this was all a test' kind, or the 'you're in danger' kind?" "The first," Groth said, and if Grant didn't know better, he'd say the warrior sounded amused. "The diplomatic summit that brought us here was, in part, an evaluation of your species." An evaluation. The Coalition wished to understand humanity better. We volunteered to conduct field research. Our cub's escape was not entirely accidental. Grant processed this. You let your kids loose on the station to see what would happen. We monitored from a distance. They were never in danger. But yes, we wished to observe how station personnel, particularly humans, would respond to a situation requiring both caution and compassion. And we passed by being nice to children. You passed by treating our offspring as what they are. Young ones deserving of care, regardless of their nature as predators. Many species we have encountered respond to Dralfax cubs with either aggression or total submission. Your humans responded with patience. Humor? Kindness? Grant leaned against the observation window. So this whole thing was a setup. The situation was engineered, Groth acknowledged. Your response was genuine. That is what mattered. A species that can extend compassion even to the children of apex predators is a species we would trust at our backs in battle. That's a pretty big leap from good with kids to reliable military allies. Is it? Groth turned to face Grant fully. Tell me, human, what is the most dangerous warrior? The one who kills efficiently? Or the one who knows when not to kill at all? Grant didn't have an answer for that. Your species confuses the galaxy, Groth continued. You are predators who nurture, hunters who protect, warriors who choose peace when possible and violence only when necessary. This adaptability, this balance, is rare, valuable. So you're saying humanity got a gold star for not freaking out when kids showed up? I am saying humanity has earned the respect of the Dralfax Dominion. And when the Dralfax respect you, the galaxy pays attention. They stood in silence for a moment, watching Aquara rotate slowly beneath them. I still need to fix a coolant leak on Deck 9, Grant said finally. Groth made that sound that might have been laughter. Then I will not keep you. But Grant, thank you for showing my children kindness when you could have chosen fear. They're good kids, Grant said. Weird, scaly, occasionally destructive good kids, but good kids. he headed back toward the maintenance tunnels, leaving the War Master at the observation deck. Behind him, he heard Groth say something in his own language, too quiet for the translator to catch. Later, Nahlis would tell him it translated roughly to, "The small ones see truly." But for now, Grant had a coolant leak to fix, and after that, 4 cubs who would be expecting their story time. Something about a dog named Admiral Barksworth and the Great Squirrel Incident of 2012. Just another day on Pinnacle Station, where the maintenance tech was secretly an honorary apex predator, and nobody found that weird anymore. Well, nobody human, anyway.